Hi, and welcome to Answers News for January the 7th, 2019, and we're all here.
January the 7th, we're all here, the three of us.
Yeah.
We're back after all the Christmas vacation and all that sort of
The
stuff.
last day of Christmas was yesterday with Epiphany, so it was the final of the 12 days of Christmas. So.
No, do you know what I told my wife? Christmas, I don't know, the older you get, you notice the years go faster, time speeds up. It's some phenomenon in physics that happens. And I told my wife, what is the point of taking the Christmas tree or the Christmas decorations or anything down, because you're only going to have to put it back up again and it won't be long, so why don't you just leave it up? She didn't agree with me.
That ruins the uniqueness of it.
But,
well, we have a wonderful studio audience with us today, so make yourselves known. And I am on the Answers in Genesis Facebook page, and Ken's on his Facebook page, and Bodie's having trouble getting on YouTube. So, so anyways, that's where we're at. So if you want to leave a comment.
If you're in the studio audience, you can even follow us on our Facebook, as long as you have your volume down. Follow on my Facebook page. We like people to tell us where they're from, which they jump on here and do. And as people get online, that's why the first couple of minutes we just talk.
Fluff and stuff.
Fluff and stuff. This is our fluff and stuff.
We talk about nothing.
We talk about nothing.
We don't talk about nothing.
Something.
Well, we would make great politicians.
In that first couple of minutes, we probably could.
Did you know that half our studio audience today are from Canada?
Big group,
Probably,
yeah. Big
Yeah.
group, yeah.
Who's from Canada?
Oh, there's more.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Actually,
like 3/4.
3/4 of them are.
75 to 80% of
I
our
know,
studio
Canadian
audience are from
invasion.
Canada today. So you all must have escaped Canada. And we have a new staff member in our audience, Gabriella, who is she actually has a PhD in paleontology from Brazil, and she started in our research department.
Today. The first day of work.
First day.
Yeah. So as we get ready to start here looking at some of the articles, maybe before we do that, Dr. Purdom, you could talk to us about these Explore Days here.
Yeah. And so this is a great avenue for those of you that live in the area and maybe have homeschool students, or even if you're a private Christian school and would like to have some really good hands-on workshops here at the Creation Museum, learning about science from a biblical worldview. And this is a great time of year to do that if you're wanting something new especially. And we offer a wide variety of these workshops. And what it is the children are here all day. So it's for grades 4th through 12th. And you get 4 hands-on interactive workshops. You have a lunch period. A lot of times there's a scavenger hunt associated with that as well. And we have all kinds of topics like explore biology, astronomy, geology, human anatomy, microscopes, forensics, genetics, all kinds of topics covering just about any subject you can think of in science. They're only $15, so it's a really good deal. And you can arrange private ones if you're a private Christian school that would like to do that. We'll do those as well. And so we're really excited about those. And also we have some information about summer camp. So we offer these in the summer as well in sort of a camp format during a week-long. A couple of those, as well as a forensic science camp this summer. So you can go online to find out more information about that, and they have the website up there, creationmuseum.org/explore.
And we pinned the website into the comments as well.
Yes.
So you can
and the other thing too is something that if you have high school students that are homeschooled and you're interested in providing lab experiences for them, you want like biology lab, chemistry lab, those kinds of things, we do offer those as well. So next fall in our newly renovated science lab, we will be offering biology, chemistry, forensic science, and physics. So you get 48 hours of lab instruction throughout the year. And so you'll want to check out information on those, and you can find that on our website as well.
So somebody from London, England is watching here.
Wow.
And I had somebody else say they love the fluff and stuff part of the show. How that? We should
Well,
call
hopefully
that
they love
the
the rest
fluff
of
and
it.
stuff part. First 2 minutes or so is fluff and stuff.
Fluff and stuff.
As notifications go out. And there are people here from all over. Somebody said hello to the Canadians. I don't know who they were, but they might be from America saying hello. Well, you are from America. You're from a different part of it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, okay. So
Still North America.
All right.
All right. Do you carry Neanderthal DNA? The shape of your skull may tell. And so what they're, because Neanderthals tend to have more elongated skulls than humans do today. And so they were trying to find out if there's certain, because we do have the sequence of Neanderthal DNA, if there's certain genetic variants from Neanderthals that tend to make skulls longer in humans today, in modern humans at least.
You mean we could look in the studio audience and point out those that are more like Neanderthals?
You know, I've met a handful of people that might have a little bit more.
I would agree with you.
But actually, when you think about it, because Neanderthals were totally human, they were descendants of Noah, they're our relatives, you'd expect to find what you would
Some of
call
their features,
Neanderthal
yeah, of
DNA in our human population. I mean, see, it's just that the evolutionists, of course, teach that they were
more closely related to primates
than we are, and so they're sort of separate. And so, you know, wow, there's even articles about Neanderthal and humans mixing. Well, Neanderthals and humans mixing means humans and humans mixing.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Right. You know, but essentially what they did is they used computer tomography, and they measured 7 Neanderthal skulls, and then they compared that to 19 modern human skulls, and then they used that data to look at about 4,500 humans today, and said, you know, which ones might actually have a little bit of showing of, say, the Neanderthal skull features, essentially.
And they found some genetic links, but it's very, very subtle. They think it has more to do with maybe how the babies, when they get older, they said not so much even when they come out of the birth canal, it would be basically the same. So, so we don't know really.
No, it is true that Neanderthals had certain distinguishing characteristics, but they're Homo sapien, they're humans. And we believe they were more of an isolated group during the Ice Age, probably didn't mix that much with others, and so are isolated from others, but they're still a part of all humans.
Right, they're part of the human
their
race.
Their DNA is a part of human DNA.
It's interesting, one of the things they said in here is the scientists noted that if a person has more Neanderthal DNA than average, that does not necessarily mean their brain is going to be more oblonged.
So there you are.
Kind of defeats.
Well, there's always going to be variation, even within the human population, within the Neanderthal population, and so. But we know Neanderthal is 100% human due to archaeological evidence, DNA evidence, lots of evidence.
I remember, you know, when I was a teenager going to museums, and Neanderthal was represented as some ape-like brute, sort of half human. So they don't represent Neanderthal like that anymore.
No, they really
don't.
So
today they represent.
You put them in a suit.
They look more like Bodhi today.
Well, I don't know.
He doesn't have the brow ridges, though.
Right.
So
I got the brows, not the brow ridge.
So somebody asked here if Dr. Purdham's going to be one of the speakers at some of those Explore workshops. Do you do some of those Explore workshops?
I do some Q&A during the genetics workshop, so I do help out a little bit with that
But Dr. Jennifer Rivera
Dr. Jennifer Rivera is our education specialist, and her area is forensic science a lot, but she's taught for many years, and we are bringing in some of our other scientists to help with the high school labs as well, so lots of good expertise. All right, Digital Museum brings millions of fossils out of the dark. So this is actually a very, very cool project that's being done by the Smithsonian Institute, obviously a museum, and the London Natural History Museum, where they're digitizing 40 million fossils. Okay, it will take 50 years is what they estimate to do this. So everyone can see all these specimens that are in drawers that have been hidden away for probably many, many years,
decades,
and study them. Yeah, it's really cool.
How many fossils did they say they're going to do?
40 million just at the Smithsonian alone.
And they also say in here that this basically represents life on Earth that you find remnants of in the fossil record. If it represents the fossil record, and the fossil record is supposedly the best evidence for evolution,
where are they all?
Where's the evidence for evolution?
If they got 40 million of these, there should be, massive numbers of really good cases of evolutionary intermediates.
But they can name everything. They can classify everything. They know what they are.
Because they look so similar to animals and organisms that we have today in many cases. They're easy to figure out.
Yeah, essentially what these fossils are, the majority of these I would suggest are remnants from the flood. Rapid burial seals out the oxygen, allows things to be turned into a fossil. That's not always the case in every instance. But of course we've got fossils post-flood. But that's what the majority of this is since about 4,350 years ago. So.
Yeah.
Not representative of millions of years.
And it really isn't about the evidence itself. I mean, the evidence is clear. We have fossils, okay? No one debates that. We can measure them, we can study them, but how old they are, how they came to be, what they're showing us has a lot to do with your worldview and your starting point.
But here's the interesting thing. They have millions of fossils that they're going to be digitizing here, but there's billions, trillions of fossils over the Earth, and to form one fossil, you've got to cover something quickly, you've got to preserve it quickly.
It's gotta be a catastrophe, essentially.
So you think about the incredible amount of fossils that there are on the surface of the Earth, and it's because of the flood of Noah's day. It's not because of millions of years of slow processes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Hey,
And so it'll be neat and really a boon for researchers that are trying to study these things.
Oh, I agree.
somebody asked a question, can you share specific scripture references that referred to and talking about dinosaurs? Well, the word dinosaur wasn't even invented till 1841.
That's right.
It was invented by Sir Richard Owen in England.
He was a Christian man.
And he was a Christian man, but he had found the bones of Iguanodon and Megalosaurus, and the word dinosauria that he came up with actually originally meant fearfully great lizard. And today we sort of simplify it and say it means terrible lizard, but it was fearfully great lizard. But I say that because people get this idea, oh, how could God create dinosaurs, or dinosaurs aren't mentioned in the Bible? Well, the word dinosaur itself is sort of an arbitrary term for particular groups of creatures. It wasn't invented till 1841. But the point is God made all the land animals on day 6.
Well, lots of animals
which
aren't
included what we
mentioned-
call dinosaurs.
Yeah, and lots of animals aren't mentioned by name in Scripture, like penguins, for example, but we have them today. So, you know, we don't.
The dodo bird's not mentioned either.
We don't worry, but we don't.
That's really
that's
sad,
what I'm
isn't
kind
it?
of like. I don't see how that's a valid point, but you know, and
the
we do have
koala's
it.
not mentioned either.
Yeah.
Or the
So-
platypus.
Right.
A lot of animals aren't mentioned.
Yeah. So
Right.
it's but
Or the
their general
kangaroo.
types are.
Yeah.
But
But I mean, they were, you know.
But
you
we
have
do
land
think
animals, you
that,
have
say,
flying creatures.
behemoth in Job 40,
Job
which is a
40.
description of a large animal, the largest land animal that ever lived. Now, most dinosaurs were small; they weren't that large.
Right.
Yeah.
But the largest land animal we found, as far as bones are concerned, is one of the dinosaurs. So it would seem that Job 40 could be a description of
Could be a
something like that.
description of it, yeah.
Maybe a sauropod or something like that. All right. NIH chief defends research with aborted baby parts. It's highly justified. So this is about Francis Collins, who's the head of the National Institutes of Health. And he basically gave testimony or defended the fact that the NIH funds grants that to organizations and people that use aborted baby parts in their research. And so he basically says that if something can be done with these tissues that might save somebody's life downstream, perhaps that's a better choice than discarding them. But the problem is the end doesn't justify the means, and we definitely don't want to create any kind of market for this where we would be needed to do
He's
that.
quoted as saying this in the article: even for somebody who is very supportive of the pro-life position, you can make a strong case for this being an ethical stance and using aborted baby parts. Can I say this? Look, Francis Collins is a Christian. He testifies to being a Christian. And that's what he says, and so if he testifies to that, I'm not going to contradict that. But he's an ardent theistic evolutionist. And so he's taken man's ideas of evolution to the Bible and reinterprets the Bible. That's why, to me, it's not surprising he's taken the stance of people today in regard to abortion and so on, and then using it to justify a particular stand in regard to using...
Right, basically ignore what the Bible says on the subject.
Because once you unlock that door, you don't just build your thinking on the Bible for your worldview, but you can take ideas outside and add them to the Bible. To me, it actually creates compromise in all sorts of areas. I see
He's
people
mixing two religions is really what he's doing. But see, I wonder how far would they go with this? You know, let me explain some terminology. You know, when somebody's physically dead, they're physically dead. But there's also a consideration called legally dead. You know, if somebody's on death row, they're considered legally dead. And, you know, we've seen this kind of stuff throughout the past, how it's used. You go back to Nazi Germany, you know, people who were in death camps were considered legally dead, even though they weren't physically dead. Now, what would they do if, say, okay, there's a baby that's going to be aborted. What if they were to say, well, you know what, let's do experiments on it before it's officially been aborted? Would they go that far? You know, because it's considered legally dead because it's going to be in the process there.
Well, here's the interesting thing. There's another scientist who was trained at Harvard, right? PhD?
Well, she's done some work at Harvard and is with an institute that has a lot of PhDs in it that are very highly qualified that said, you don't need to do this.
In fact,
Period.
says that you don't need aborted baby parts to do this research. And in fact, other sources are actually better.
And that's what we find with a lot of those things.
They actually go so far as to say, after over 100 years of research, no therapies have been discovered or developed that require aborted fetal tissue.
Yeah. That's the thing.
One of the reasons they push the aborted fetal tissue, I believe, is because they're pushing the abortion issue. I mean, it's to justify abortion. That's what a lot of it's all about.
The same is true, like we could say the same is true for embryonic stem cells. You know, we never found any therapies based off of those cells. Now, adult stem cells, yes, but not embryonic stem cells, which is the taking of a human life in an embryo form.
And adult stem cells are fairly easy to get, aren't they?
And they're much safer to use, actually.
There's a statement here in this article. On Monday, the Trump administration issued a plan to promote ethical alternatives to aborted baby parts in scientific research. And praise the Lord that they are doing that.
Yeah, the NIH is actually giving $20 million to develop, even though Francis Collins has said this, the organization that he heads is going to give money to develop alternatives. So
You know what frustrates me is this isn't new. You look back at World War II, and you know the Nazis did all sorts of experimentations on Jews and other people that were in the concentration camps and the death camps, and they did all sorts of drug testing. They did freezing tests on people, altitude tests. They did all of this in the name of medicine.
Scientific research.
And it makes you wonder, you know, how.
That's the thing. It's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. You know, they do it one way.
Bodie, someone here said you made a good point.
Wow.
That's amazing. Bodie made a good point. Everyone clap. Bodie made a good point. Oh. There we are.
Yeah.
I just wanted people to know the studio audience was still alive.
Oh, okay.
They're still
They're
here.
Had nothing to do with
Did you notice that clap had a Canadian accent?
I said A at the end. Okay.
Take off, eh?
Valley couple pushing for more diversity in doll sets set to meet with Mattel. So this is about a gay couple that wanted to help, I think, their niece with the fact that they were getting married.
There's two guys.
Right. They wanted to find a doll set that represented their marriage. And so, but Mattel only sells Ken and Barbie together in the wedding set. And so they had to make their own set by buying the wedding set and then an extra Ken doll and then putting the two Ken dolls together for their wedding set.
Right, yeah, they wanted a doll wedding set, and they went so far as to say that the only wedding set they could find was a Ken and Barbie. And, you know, I actually looked up, there's all sorts of homosexual boy dolls and girl dolls and things like that that could have been done. You know, why not use something like that? I mean, it's like they were like, forget all that stuff. We want to go after them.
She's
and
iconic, though. These
are
iconic.
You know, one of the things that I find it's happening more and more is with the gay movement, you know, LGBTQ and so on. They want to make an issue in regard to everyone and force their views on everyone and they want acceptance totally of their position. It's not just freedom that they want acceptance. They want to force it on everyone. That's what I'm finding.
Well, if they want to have like a double Ken doll, what they should do, we should contact Mattel and say, hey, can you model these after Ken Ham?
No.
I mean,
no, do you know what we should do?
Want
we
that.
should call Mattel and say, we think this would sell really well. A Ken, Georgia, and Bodie set for Answers News.
Yeah, Answers News Barbie set.
Those sales are not going to be good.
Look, people even clapping. Okay, people can they can put in the comments if they would buy a Ken, Georgia, and Bodie set. Then they could have it up there, and every time Answers News comes on, they could have the three dolls, right?
Okay, that's a little scary.
Hey, by the way, did you know Babylon Bee made a comment? You know Babylon Bee.
I know what Babylon Bee is.
They're a satire.
Do you know they do satire? And particularly in regard to the Christian world, they do satire. And so they did one here, Mattel Unveils Barbie Polygamy Edition. So there you are. There's...
And you can collect all
Are they not
71.
clever?
Ken with 3 wives.
But it makes the point, though. And the point is that where do you draw the line? Right? Where is that line? Because they're saying, well, we need a Ken and Ken set. Well, why not a polygamy set? Why not a bestiality set? Why not a
But on a Holocaust
set?
Barbie or a rapist Ken or pedophile Ken or something, why not? I mean, seriously, why would they draw a line here and not here?
See, here's the interesting thing. You have the LGBT movement and the secularists and that saying Christians have no right to say marriage is a man and a woman. They have no right to say abortion's wrong and so on. They don't want that. But they draw lines, right? They'll draw lines right now in regard to polygamy or pedophilia or bestiality, or some of them will. But on what do they base their standards to determine where their lines are
It's
drawn?
all arbitrary.
See,
It's
with
just
Christians,
man's
we have an
ideas.
absolute authority, the Word of God. So we know where the lines are because God's the one that owns us
That's
and determines what's right and what's wrong.
Another thing that's interesting about all this, marriage is a Christian doctrine.
Yeah.
It goes back to God literally creating Adam and Eve, the first marriage. Jesus defended this in Matthew chapter 19, Mark chapter 10. Marriage is between a man and a woman because that's what God designed it as. Marriage is a Christian institution. Why would somebody who's not Christian,
Yeah.
not following the Bible, blatantly oppose the Bible? Why would they even want to get married?
That's the question.
They're
Yeah.
like, oh boy, I got to go over here and use this Christian doctrine. Why would they do that all of a
Yeah.
sudden? That's so inconsistent.
Well, I think really what it comes down to is because the government, which shouldn't be dealing with moral issues like this, the government is into marriage and talking about what the rules are and what defines marriage, and then it comes down to taxes and
Right.
so on, and legal aspects and that sort of thing.
But one thing I will agree with this gay couple, one of the things they said, it says it's going to come up in your family no matter what. It's not that huge of a shock anymore. And he's absolutely right that this is something that every family, every person is going to have to deal with at some point. And that's why it's important that we have a biblical worldview, that we have solid biblical answers to these questions so that we can speak the truth in love. And we can help people know the problems with that and the sin that is, and know Jesus Christ. Those are the
And
the gospel offers.
I mean, as Mattel's a secular company.
Right.
We can't go and tell them what you should or shouldn't do. They determine what they want to do. But we as Christians can decide if we're going to buy their dolls or not, right?
Right, absolutely.
So, hey, we've already had incredible response here to the Answers News doll set.
Oh, wow.
I've had 2 people say they would buy one.
I don't know who would produce them, but okay.
Somebody says here, bestiality Barbie.
Oh, okay,
my
yeah,
goodness.
let's go. Let's move
Yeah,
on.
let's move on.
All right, LGBT activists want to force Catholic schools in Canada to hire teachers in same-sex marriage. So we see this more and more coming out of Canada. This is with the Alberta Human Rights Commission.
Yeah, but there's some great young people out of Canada here today.
Yes, I know. And so what they want is they're basically saying that the Catholic Church can't hold to Catholic values. They can't impose their Catholic values in their Catholic school on their Catholic teachers.
And they can't run it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Well,
Here's what it is. They're taking secular humanism and trying to say, we're going to make the Catholic Church follow after secular humanist doctrines.
Well, something similar in Australia right now. They're talking about legislation that forces Christian schools to employ gay people, those in the LGBT,
Anti-Christian
transgender, or whatever, that go against the statement of faith of the school, but they want to legislate to force them to do that.
Yeah.
And you know, here's what I see happening across our whole Western world. It's happening in America, it's happening in Canada, it's happening in other places in our Western world. They want to force Christian groups. You know, we've seen it, we've actually had some articles here on Answers News with groups in universities, student groups. That's a Christian group that are told you've got to allow an atheist, non-Christian to be able to be a president of your group or whatever, or you know, be in the leadership of the group, and then that destroys the Christian group. But they're trying to force Christian groups to have non-Christian people and people who go against their statement of faith. But do you see them trying to force LGBT groups to have someone who doesn't believe LGBT? Do you see it? Do we see them trying to force abortion groups to have pro-life? Can you imagine them saying, Planned Parenthood, you have to allow a
You have to have
pro-life
at least
person
Georgia Purdom on your...
on your board?
On your board.
Or do we see them forcing atheist groups to allow Christians, Bible-believing Christians, like, can you imagine them saying, you've got to have Ken Ham as president of your atheist group?
Yeah.
But they're not doing any. I would steer them in the right direction. I would really help help their atheist group. But they're not doing that. Do you notice it's all to do with trying to force the non-Christian worldview into Christian groups, or those
Double
that
standard.
take
That's what it always is. It's not about what it's just everything that goes against Christianity. That's what they want. That's what they're against.
Hey, notice the picture up here. They have a couple of dolls as a wedding set there.
Yeah.
That the people apparently in the previous article couldn't find.
Well, they can find them, but they want the iconic Barbie. You know, that's what they want. Really.
Well, yeah, because
No, they didn't want Barbie. They wanted to leave her.
Well, they want Ken.
it's just like when people in the past have gone to a baker and said, we want you to bake us a cake to celebrate gay marriage. And they say, look, there's other bakers in the town that'll do that. My convictions are not. They do it to force the issue to
Right.
try and take them to court to destroy them.
Well, and
Right.
that leads in well to our next story about this. Is New York Christian gives Christian group ultimatum, change gay adoption policy or end placement program. So this is a Christian adoption agency in Syracuse, New York, that's basically been told you have to change and allow same-sex couples or even couples that are cohabitating to adopt. You can't just allow married couples that consist of a man and a woman to adopt.
And actually, this wasn't even someone who went there and you know, complained about them. This is actually the state saying you're an adoption agency, and so the state of New York is saying you have to agree to send children to homes with gay couples. And so there are other groups that will do that.
Right.
But this group is a Christian group, and so they're being told you either do that or we close you down.
So the state is openly telling these Christians that they don't have the free exercise of their religion.
Exactly.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yep.
And that's happening more and more in our Western world.
Yeah.
And we've seen it a lot. We have some people in from Canada in our audience. We've seen it a lot in Canada in recent times. We're seeing it happening in Australia, seeing it happening over in the United Kingdom, in Europe. We're seeing it happening more and more across the United States. There's an incredible spiritual battle in our Western
You know
world.
what it's time for? It's time for people to repent.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
this
it's time for.
and this organization doesn't even accept any state funding or funds. It's totally nonprofit.
private.
And so, but they're being persecuted for this, and so it's just amazing to. Now, Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a great organization, is trying to help them in this lawsuit. But you know, I thought when I read this, I thought it's more about, you know, I am the mother of an adopted child, and I think it's all more about being politically correct than about the children who need good homes and good families, and that's just sad to see.
Well, you know,
They
when
don't care about the children.
we were building the Ark Encounter, and we had some issues with the state of Kentucky at that stage, and we actually went to federal court because we were told by the then governor, not the governor that's there now, but the then governor, that because we were employing people who signed our statement of faith only, we employ Christians at the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. We're a non-profit organization, that therefore we weren't allowed to receive any government incentives that other tourist facilities receive. And actually a federal judge ruled in our favor and said under the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, we're allowed to employ people who will sign our statement of faith because that's who we
That's
are.
who we are. That's our identity.
And that's how it has been in the past and how it should be.
Yeah.
But again, you know, you don't see that. You don't see it happening against us, the secular group saying, "Oh, you must employ a Christian." You don't see that sort of thing happening.
All right. This next article, at least the first one in it, is Boy Scouts crumbling. So this has to do with the Boy Scouts of America, which have recently been renamed Scouts USA. And it's talking about how so they've recently made a lot of changes to allow girls, to allow
transgender leaders.
Yeah, gay leaders, gay scouts, all of that. And so, but it's hurt them a lot financially.
People are jumping ship from them. They're leaving. They're like, we're out of here.
Yeah.
And the Girl Scouts are suing them.
Yeah.
Because it's
that's
infringement.
over the name. Yeah.
Right, trademark infringement, because they're saying we're the Girl Scouts, right, not you, and so you shouldn't be allowed to have girls.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of parents out there going, well, do I want to send my boy off with someone who might be a homosexual leader to go camping with them? They're a little nervous about it. I'll be honest about that.
I don't blame them.
And so
Parents should be.
Ever since they did that, they made that change in regard to allowing openly gay people in and openly gay leaders in, transgender leaders and so on, and then opening it up to girls. And we're living in a time when they say there's no such thing as gender anyway. What a mess it is out there.
It's a mess.
But the good thing in this article, there is a group called Trail Life USA.
Yeah.
And Trail Life USA
Christian organization.
is a Christian organization that is replacing, in a sense, the Boy Scout
they're
movement.
for boys. I mean, only boys can join.
Now there's a girl. It's American Heritage Girls.
There's a couple different girl
I know
ones.
there's a few out there, but
yeah.
And you know, people are flocking to those.
And
they're
that's,
like,
good.
What we want.
I'm glad to see that Christians are standing up and saying, no, we're not going to be a part of this type of organization anymore. We're going to do an alternative. And we've met a few of the Trail Life individuals that have come through here and through the museum. And so I'm encouraged by their growth and pray that Christians will continue to do
well,
that.
Someone here made the statement, moral decay leads to financial decay, and it's very true. And
Yeah.
it's interesting though, if you think about you see this coming through in so many of these articles, the gay movement, the LGBT movement, our kids are confronted with it every day. It's a minority, a small
It really
minority
is,
in the culture, and it's driving the entire culture of our Western world. And I believe that's because it's a judgment of God in Romans 1, of God turning people over to their depraved natures.
Yep.
Well, the next part in this article talks about Miss Universe being redefined. I don't know if anybody saw what's been going on with the Miss Universe contest, but a contestant from Spain is the first transgender to enter the pageant's history. And
So it's a guy
it's a guy
who's taken hormones and things to try to look like a girl.
Right. And, they didn't make the top 20, but it's all over the news and that sort of thing. And, I just thought that's interesting. Basically, if somebody identifies a certain way, you have no choice but to accept it. And Babylon Bee came along, and they decided, well, I guess all the losers identify as winners. So what do you do about that now?
Yeah, so it's a satirical article.
It's a
The Miss
satire
Universe
article.
pageant is once again embroiling controversy, this time because all content losers have identified as winners. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
See, that's the
Babylon
thing.
Bee's got a very clever
Yeah.
way of stating things. But,
Yeah.
See, what if all these Canadians identified as Americans?
well,
They are Americans.
No,
They're
but
North America.
how about USA Americans?
USANs.
There we
Yeah,
go.
would you be allowed to work here?
Yeah.
Because you say, I'm identifying as one.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the
You know?
thing. That's the problem.
What if you identified as an Australian?
I
don't
You
think
don't
we-
want to do that.
one of the comments that popped up here is somebody was asking, does AIG ever deal with the New Age issue? And actually we do. We have a World Religions and Cults book series, a 3-part series. Volume 2 specifically has a chapter on New Age. We hit about 60 world religions and cults in there. It really is powerful, so I want to encourage you to consider that book. At the same time, we got a couple of resources here. There's a brand new one here from Ken, Fire in My Bones. And I was there when you recorded this. It was an incredible recording, but it runs kind of through your history and some of your testimony.
It's really how AIG started, really going back to my childhood, some embarrassing photos in there. It's an hour and a half. It's
Yes,
really my
brown
There
hair.
were
testimony.
some embarrassing photos. So if you want to see
It's
it,
really my whole testimony, how I was
Yeah.
brought up
Yeah.
and how the whole
It's really
history of AIG, how the museum came about, how the art came about, all that.
Right. And we also have a new one, the Riot and the Dance. And, this was very popular in the theaters, actually.
Yes. And
So-
it's a nature documentary from a creation biblical worldview. And so they're going to be making more of these as well, looking at different areas. And so it is spectacular cinematography.
Yep.
Very,
Right in the
very
dance,
well
but-
done. So,
Hey,
all right.
just a couple of comments here before we
Okay.
go. The beginning of the end for Barbie.
Could be.
And then someone else said, or someone said, you got to love Babylon Bee. Someone said they identify as a tree. Someone else is identifying as a millionaire. So there we are. We've
Wish that
started
would
something
work.
I
here.
identify as me.
Someone said, if you don't
That's profound,
identify
isn't it?
me as such, I'll just leave.
Huh.
Oh.
Where's your pun
So,
today? See,
yeah.
somebody beat you at the pun,
See, somebody
Bodie.
beat you to the pun.
Bodie always
so.
tries to do
All
puns.
right. Well,
That's
that's
right.
all we have time for today. So we'll leave on that note. And we'll see you Thursday.
God bless.
Thank you so much.